All right, what's up? How are y'all doing? All right, so everybody have a great day? Yeah? I can't even see anybody, but I'm assuming you're all sunburned? Yeah? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Nice. I got a little bit today. Instead of going to the beach, because I made the mistake and did not bring my bathing suit, because I came down here, so dumb. It's such a guy thing to do. We just like throw things in a bag like the day before we're leaving, which is why some of you came down here in like a trash bag. Exactly, yeah. And you have one pair of underwear, and so God bless everybody else in your group. And so, but yeah, I did that. I just threw everything in a bag, and so I went and played putt-putt instead, and my daughter got 4 holes in 1. And I was like, what? I know, so she won. So she's 9, and that was a good check to my pride. So tonight, you guys, I want to start off just by telling you this. So as a parent, dad of 3 kids, I've told you guys that. There are certain things you'll discover one day when you're a parent. There are certain characteristics in your life that you hope don't get passed on to your kids. There are certain things that you do, certain ways that you act, certain just parts of your character that you hope, gosh, I really hope that doesn't get passed on. I hope that ends with me. Like, I hope that my kids don't act that way or don't do that thing or don't like get triggered like that. And yet the other day, just in full transparency, I had to reprimand my daughter for literally picking up one of those things that was true of me that I wished wouldn't be passed on. It happened the other day. My daughter and my middle son, they were playing a game of chess. Now, I don't know why they've now all of a sudden gotten into chess. I do actually know why. My daughter is the athlete, and so she likes sports. She's outgoing. She likes doing all that stuff. She's very competitive. My middle son, not so much. He doesn't really like sports. We did the soccer thing. We tried that out for him. And after the games, we would get in the car and I'd be like, hey man, that was pretty crazy. They beat you guys 10-1. And he was like, they were great. And I was like, what? I'm like, man, did you see that kid that scored 6 goals past you? And he was like, yes, I invited him to my birthday. And I was like, what? You should have been kicking him. And he was like, nah, I told him we were going to main event, Dad. And I'm like, okay, all right. So he's not competitive, so we were like, all right, we're like, you got to find something else to do. So we took him out of soccer, and we're like, hey man, what do you want to do? And he was like, Roblox, and we were like, no, you got to do something else besides Roblox. And so we're like, you can play Roblox or whatever, and but that can't be your only thing. You got to have something else. And so we're like, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, a couple of my friends from school, they go to chess club. And so my 7-year-old now goes to chess club, and at first he was not good, but now he's gotten really good. And so him and my daughter, we bought him a chess set because we're like, all right, let's go, Bobby Fischer over here, and so we're like, all right, let's, he's playing chess and he's actually gotten pretty good. And so they were playing the other day. My daughter and him, and she's the older one, so she's used to beating him all the time at everything. And so they were playing, though, and he was winning. I noticed I didn't say won because the game did not get finished because at some point he's winning and he's got most of her pieces, and then she did the classic, you can't beat me if there's no pieces on the board. You know what I mean? And so she knocks all the pieces off, and then I'm upstairs doing laundry, and I hear him Blakely, and she's like, you never beat me, and so they're having that brother-sister moment, you know what I mean? And they're yelling at each other, and I come downstairs, and I'm like, yo, what happened? And he was like, I was about to checkmate her. And she was like, no, because I'll, And so then I find myself scolding my daughter for being exactly like me. Because, you guys, I used to do the exact same thing to my little brother. The reality is my daughter, very much like me, she wants to be great at everything. She wants to be great at everything that she does. And like me, if she thinks she won't be great at something, this is how bad it is. If she thinks she won't be great at something, she won't even try it. And then if she does try it one time and she's not the best at it the first time, she will never do it again. I mean, and that, you guys, like, she got that so honestly. She got that from me. I used to be the exact same way when I was her age. And in some ways, I can still be that way, where I want to be great at everything. As a matter of fact, I have not gone skiing in 20 years because when I was 17 years old, my mom made me go on a ski trip with the church because that was my punishment for spring break that year. And so I told you guys I didn't always know Jesus. And so I had a terrible time spring break, and so then she made me go on the ski trip that next year with the youth group, and she was like, you're gonna go and you're gonna hear about Jesus because Lord knows you need it. And so I went on the ski trip, and I was mad about it, and I went there, and you guys, I got up there to the ski trip, and they were like, you can snowboard or you can ski. And I was like, well, I'm kind of cool, I'm edgy. I'm not like these Christian kids that are gonna go skiing. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I'm gonna snowboard because nobody looks cool skiing. You're like, And so I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna snowboard because that looks tough, And so I was like, I'm gonna snowboard. And then they were like, hey, have you ever snowboarded before? And I was like, no, I never snowboarded before. And they were like, well, do you want to practice on the bunny hill? And I was like, the bunny hill? That sounds like where the Christians are gonna go. No, I don't wanna go on the bunny hill. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go up this big lift with my snowboard on. I got up to the top, you guys, and I realized, whoa, this is way higher. I probably should have gone on the bunny hill. And then I got up there and proceeded to go straight down this hill. And at right about the time that I broke the sound barrier, I was like, and I tried to turn, and I thought that I was going to give birth to my tailbone. It was like, and it hurt really, really bad, and I was super embarrassed. And while that was happening, all these middle school kids who I guess parents took them skiing all the time, they came down with like their little funny hats and like, and I was just like, oh, I hate you, And so that being said, right, like I was so bad, I didn't want to do it. I didn't even do it the next day. I sat in there and just drank hot chocolate and was angry. And since then, 17 years old, I've never gone skiing again because I wasn't good at it the first time because like my daughter, right, I want to be great at everything. Now, maybe you don't want to be great at everything, but here's what I know about all of us. We want to be great at something. You want to be great at something. You may not want to be great at every single thing, like that is a character flaw of mine and my daughter's, but you want to be great at something. You want to be great. Maybe it's a sport that you're playing. Maybe it's in school. You want to be great at that. Maybe you want to be great at relationships, dating. You want to be great in that area. Maybe it's some other hobby that you've got that you want to be great at. It's video games, or it's your social media platform that you want to be great at. Maybe the reason why you're down here like at camp is you want like to be great in the area of your faith. Like I don't know what that is for you, but we all want to be great at something. And the reality is that we all want our lives to be great, don't we? We want our lives to be great. You want to be great at something, and you want your life to be great. You want to have a great life full of meaning, full of purpose. You want to meet your potential. You want to have a life of impact and influence. Like you want to have a great life. And so do I. And tonight, you guys, that's what we're going to talk about, is how do we build a life that you would call great? How do we build that kind of life? And in order to guide us tonight, you guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump into a conversation that Matthew records in his gospel. And if you're not familiar with Matthew, Matthew was a first century tax collector who actually came face to face with, met Jesus personally, spent time with Jesus. Jesus was one of the few people in his life that saw potential in him, believed in him, forgave him, extended grace to him, and then invited him to follow. And so Matthew spent some time actually walking with Jesus, and later in Matthew's life, he decided he was gonna write down because future generations would want to hear about this Jesus. And so Matthew took time to write it all down, and in your Bible, it's called the Gospel of Matthew. This is Matthew's eyewitness account to the life of Jesus. And in Matthew's gospel, he records a conversation that he got to witness and was also a part of. And in this conversation, Jesus is going to show us what he believes and what he teaches is the way to build a great life. He's gonna show us how to have a life that all of us would define as a life that is great, that's full of purpose, that's full of impact, that's full of influence, like that kind of life. Jesus is gonna teach us how to do that in this conversation. And so here's how the conversation goes. It starts right here in Matthew chapter 20, and we'll start in verse 20. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there, or it'll be up here. So Matthew 20, verse 20. It says, then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. Now the Zebedee's sons, just to give you a little context here, Zebedee's sons are these two guys, James and John. And these are young guys. A lot of scholars believe they're probably somewhere between 15 and 18, so they're teenagers. The reason why they believe that is both of these guys were unmarried and they were still working with their dad when they meet Jesus and he calls them for the first time. And so it's likely that they were apprenticing. So these are young guys. It's actually believed that John was probably the youngest follower of Jesus at the time in the originals of the original 12. He might have been as young as 15 years old. And so here's these two young guys, and they've got this idea, and they want to come ask Jesus for a favor, and they get their mom to come with them, which at first, when you're reading that, can seem like I'll be honest, when I read this the first time, I was like a little judgmental of them, like, why did you guys get your mom? Why didn't you just go talk to Jesus for yourself? But then I think about myself when I was younger, and there was a lot of things that I didn't want to have to do that I just wanted my mom to do for me, right? As a matter of fact, some of you won't even still order for yourselves at restaurants. You're like, I don't know, Mom, what did I say again? And so you want your mom to do it, right? Some of you, your mom is like, yeah, that's right, I was thinking about this for me. Now, listen, I know, I'm not just making fun of you. I was thinking about this for me. When I was reading this, I was kind of judging them a little bit, and then I thought, oh man, when I was younger, like there were some things for sure that I wanted my mom to do because I was embarrassed or I was a little nervous to do. When I was in 6th grade, you guys, I thought I wanted to play guitar. And so I realized that I didn't want to play guitar. I just wanted to be around pretty girls. And so then I was like, but the guy, but I tried to play guitar, and about 2 weeks into it, I realized that I was terrible at guitar. And true to form, because I wasn't good at it immediately, I was like, I'm done with this. I want to quit. My fingers hurt, and I'm not good at this. And so I told my mom. I said, Mom, I want to quit these guitar lessons. And she was like, great. You need to call and tell the guy that you're quitting. And I was like, no, I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to call and tell him I'm quitting. That's embarrassing, Mom. Like, what if he's like disappointed? I'm like, you call him, please. And she was like, no, absolutely not. You need to call. And then I proceeded to pitch this fit, and I did the thing that you do when I was like, you're the worst mother ever, and I'm telling, a good mother would call and quit for their child. I'm yelling down the stairs. And she's like, then I'm a bad mom, but you're calling him. So we had this moment. Eventually, you guys, I called the guy, right? And so I called, and I was like, hey, man, I'm quitting. And he was like, thank God. He knew. He was not even sad for 1 second. He was like, okay, bye. He knew this wasn't going anywhere. I was not going to be in for free. And so it was not happening. They don't have the vowels, so I refuse to pronounce them. And so I was like, man, I can understand, though, these guys, how they feel. They want their mom to get involved. I wanted my mom to get involved. So they got this favor that they're going to ask of Jesus. And they get their mom, and so their mom comes with them, and then she asks Jesus for a favor, and Jesus says, what is it that you want, he asked. So this mom and her sons are coming with this request, and you notice Jesus, he says, what do you want? And it's just a little side note, but I just always mark this down, like that when it comes to your questions, when it comes to the things that you desire, like you can always come to Jesus. He doesn't promise to give you the answer that you always want, and he doesn't promise to give you everything that you ask for, but he invites you always to ask. And so that's a good thing to remember, that it's okay to ask Jesus anything. And so they come and they're making this request, and it's a crazy request. Look, what is it that you want, he asked. And she said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and then the other at your left in your kingdom. So at this time, you guys, they are believing that they're under the assumption that they think that Jesus is about to go into Jerusalem and that he is going to kick out Rome, who was ruling at the time, and that Jesus is going to establish a new kingdom. He's going to be the king, and it's going to be on earth, and he's going to kick these guys out. And so then there are going to be powerful, important, popular positions that people are going to be able to fill in his kingdom. And so these two guys are like, hey, Mom, we'd like the two most important positions that would be in any kingdom, and that is to be the right and the left like next to the person that is on the throne. We want to be the right-hand man, the left-hand man. We want to be those people, the two most important positions. And so here, this mom is coming and asking on behalf of her sons, she's coming and asking Jesus, hey, like Jesus, when you actually establish your kingdom, we want to be in positions of power. We want to be in important positions. And what this is revealing to us, you guys, is that like many of us, if not all of us, these guys, right, they want to be great. They want to be great. They want to be successful. They want to be important. They want their lives to have some meaning. They want to be popular. They want these positions. They want to be powerful. They want to be great. They want to be some somebodies. And so they're coming to Jesus and they're saying, hey, can we have these two positions? You see what they had been taught their entire lives, the picture that they had had of what a great life looked like is that of like a ladder. They viewed life like a ladder. Like we have this little one. I told my wife I wouldn't get on a really big ladder because I was teaching this to some interns one time, and I got a little bit, and so the way these guys viewed life was that life is like a ladder, and that the higher you climb, the happier you'll be. And so they just kind of thought, oh man, like the higher up we go, the happier we're gonna be. And that's the way a lot of us are taught to view life as well. We think that when it comes to having a great life, when it comes to having, purpose and meaning and importance and influence in life, that life is a lot like a ladder. And that the higher I climb, the happier I'm gonna be. If I could just get that starting position on the team, if I could just get into that relationship with that person, then I'm gonna be happier. And then if I could just get into that school that I've always been trying to get into, that everybody else is getting denied from, if I could get into that school, then I'm gonna be happier and happier. If I could get that kind of job, if I could get this many followers, if I could get this many likes, if I could get this many subscribers, whatever it is, right? Like we have this view of life, that life is like a ladder that we're all on, and that the higher we climb, the happier we'll be. And that's where James and John are. That's how they're viewing life. They want to be great, they want to have a great life, and they think that it's about status. And they think that it's about climbing up higher. And they think that it's about power, and it's about popularity, and it's about prestige, and they think it's about pay. And so that's what they're obsessed about. And so they got their mom and they're coming to Jesus and they're like, Jesus, we want to be great. We want to be important. We want our lives to have meaning. And so would you give us positions of power? Would you give us these big positions so that our life feels like it counts for something? Jesus responds. He says this. He says, you don't know what you're asking. Jesus says to them, he's like, hey, I understand what you want. I just don't think you understand what that's gonna take. Reminds me of something that happened the other day, again, with my kids. I had told them, hey, if you guys don't clean up this area, there's gonna be some consequences. And I looked at my daughter and I said, do you want some consequences? And she was like, no. And then I looked at my 3-year-old and I go, Landon, do you want some consequences? And he goes, yes. And I said, are you sure you want consequences? He goes, yes. And I said, do you know what a consequence is? He goes, no, but I want one. And I was like, dude, You don't know what you're asking, right? Like, and in the same way, right? I have a feeling like this is kind of how Jesus feels right now. These guys are coming and they're asking for something and they think they know what they're asking for. They think that they're asking for the right thing. They're like, Jesus, we want to be great. We want great lives. We want lives of meaning and purpose. And we want all that stuff, influence and importance. And we want our lives to matter. And so would you give us high positions? Because the higher we climb, the happier we'll be, Jesus. And he goes, I don't think you know what you're asking. I don't think you know what it is that you're really asking me for. And he says this, he says, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? Can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? Now, in this moment, you guys, Jesus is referring to the fact that when he's going to go to Jerusalem, he's going to lay his life down for people, and he's going in to suffer on behalf of others. And so they're thinking that he's talking about status, and they're still thinking about status, but Jesus is talking about suffering. And so he goes, I don't think that you know what you're asking for, because what I'm going to do is to lay my life down. And what you're asking is for me to give you a high position. And so they're thinking about status. Jesus is thinking about suffering. And he goes, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? Can you do what I'm about to do on behalf of others? They answer because they're still thinking about status. They're like, yeah, we can. We can, they answered. And they answered really quick. Yeah. Jesus, can you do this? Yeah, of course, duh. Jesus, yes, we can be the right and the left-hand man. It's not what he's talking about. Jesus said to them, he said, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or my left, that's not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. Jesus looks at these guys and he's like, yes, you're actually right. Like you are going to experience the same thing that I'm about to experience. You're actually going to suffer for your faith in the same way that I'm about to go and suffer. And it's important, you guys, that we understand this. Jesus is talking to these two guys that he loves and he cares about. These are his followers. And he's telling them, hey, you're right. You're going to suffer in this life. And it's important, students, you got to get this. Jesus does not promise you pain-free, problem-free life. He does not promise you a pain-free and problem-free life. He does not promise you easy. He promises you better. And sometimes, listen, this is hard to get. And I know that there are some of you out there and you're going through some stuff or you've been through some stuff and you've been wondering why God would even allow that, but it's because he doesn't promise you easy. He promises you better. And sometimes the road to better goes through some places that you wish you didn't have to go. And that if it were up to you, you'd probably avoid. And if we don't get this, you guys, if we don't get that sometimes suffering is a part of following Jesus, that he doesn't promise us pain-free and problem-free, sometimes if you don't get this, then you will find yourself angry at God, thinking that he failed to deliver on something he never promised. And so Jesus looks at these two young men and he's like, yeah, you're gonna suffer. You're absolutely right. And he's being prophetic right here, you guys, because James, one of these brothers, James ultimately, later in his life, James will be beheaded for his faith by a man named Herod Agrippa. And then later, his little brother John will later be exiled to an island called Patmos where he's forced to work a mine. Some church histories teach that he was actually boiled alive before they sent him, but it didn't kill him, so then they exiled him. And then later he would come back and he ultimately died of old age. But Jesus looks at these two young guys and he's like, you're right. You actually will drink from this cup. You're gonna suffer in the same way that I'm suffering. He says, but to give you guys these positions, to give you guys this thing that you're asking for, to give you guys these positions of power or influence, he was like, it's not even for me. He's like, I've given all of that decision-making to God the Father. He said, God the Father is gonna decide all that. I'm not even about that. I'm deferring to him. And so you're asking me for something that I'm not even like trying to give. You're asking me for these positions and I'm not even concerning myself with that. So where we've gotten in the conversation. These guys have asked Jesus, they want great lives, they want to be great in life, and so they've asked for what they think is going to get them there. They've been living with this assumption about life, that life is like a ladder that we're all on, and that the higher they climb, the happier that they're going to be. And so they've been living with that assumption, and so that's how they've approached Jesus at this time, and they're asking for this position, and Jesus is going, look, I don't even, this is not it. Conversation continues. It says, when the 10 heard about this, so the other guys that have been a part of Jesus' inner circle, it says that they were indignant with the two brothers. So they're frustrated. They're angry at the other two brothers, at the two brothers. And the reason why they're angry, you guys, it's not because they were so humble and because they understood what Jesus was about. It's because they also viewed life like a ladder that everybody's on. And what they thought was happening is that if those two brothers got that position, then what happened to them? They were getting climbed over. And so they're mad at the brothers because they're like, you're trying to step over us and climb higher. And if you climb higher than us, then you'll be happier than us and you'll have a better life than us. And so now they're mad at the brothers because they feel like they're getting stepped over. And they feel like they're gonna get opportunities that they wish that they had gotten. And you guys, this is what happens when we view life as a ladder that we're all on. That's what happens in our hearts when we view life as a ladder that we're all on. We can't ever even celebrate anybody else's success because it means that they're stepping over ours. When you view life as a ladder that we're all on, then there's always higher to climb, and so you can never really truly be content. You're always either looking down or looking up at somebody. And so that means that you either, if you're looking down on people, you find yourself being judgmental, and when you're looking up, then you find yourself feeling less than. And that's what happens when you live life on the ladder. You end up in this comparison trap. And you can never really truly enjoy what you've got because you're always busy looking at what somebody else has got. And so these guys are frustrated. They're indignant at these two brothers because they're like, you're trying to climb ahead of us. And that means that you'll get more enjoyment out of life and you're gonna have a better life. And so they're frustrated. Jesus hears this whole conversation going down. And it says that Jesus called them together and he says this to them, and this is where he's gonna teach us how to actually have a great life. It says, Jesus called them together and he said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Jesus says, look, I know what you've been taught about life. I know what you've been taught. I know that you've been taught that life is like a ladder, and the higher you climb, the happier you're gonna be. And I know that you've been taught by the people that are in power and by the culture that's around you that the person at the top is living the best life and that everybody else below them is living a little bit worse than them. He's like, I know that you've been taught that real happiness and joy and greatness in life is measured in your status and in your power and in your paycheck and in your popularity. I know what you've been taught. But I'm just telling you, he's like, the example that's been set for you is not the example that's best for you. And young people, you gotta hear this. And hopefully you can get this earlier than a lot of us adults did. That the example that culture has set for us is not the example that's best for us. And in the same way that these guys have been taught that life is like a ladder, that's what we're being taught every single day, all the time. Culture is teaching us life is like a ladder. The higher you climb, the happier you'll be. The more people you're ahead of, the happier your life is. The more people you're looking down on and the less people you're looking up at, the happier your life is gonna be. That success in life is all about your status and your power and your paycheck and your position and your popularity. It's all that. That's what makes for a great life. Those are the building blocks for a great life. That's what culture's teaching us. That's the example that was set for us, but it's not the example that was best for us. And I love Jesus pulls these guys aside and he goes, hey, the example that was set for you, I've seen it, I understand it, but it's not what's best for you, which is why he says, hey, look, I know that that's what they do, but he says, not so with you. Not so with you. I know that's the example that was set for you, but that ain't it. That's not it. That's not where real greatness is. That's not where real happiness is. That's not where real success is. You want your life to be great? Let me show you the way. He says instead, meaning there is a different way. There is a better way. There's another path to walk. There's another posture to take. There's another view out there about how to have a great life. You don't have to just accept the one that culture's been painting for us. He says instead, whoever wants to become great. Now notice, I love this. Jesus says whoever wants to become great. He doesn't say, how dare you want to become great? He doesn't say, I can't believe you want to be great. That's not what Jesus does right here. He says, no, look, if you want to be great, that's all right. If you want to be great, great. Let me show you the real way to get there. So Jesus does not reprimand them for wanting to be great, and he doesn't reprimand you for wanting to be great. He redirects us. And so he's not reprimanding them right now. He's like, you want to be great? That's great. Let me show you the way, the real way to have a great life, to have a successful life, to discover your purpose and your potential, to find real influence and real importance in this life. Let me show you the way to build a truly great life. He says instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. So Jesus, he calls these guys aside. They're arguing over who's gonna be top dog. They're arguing over who's gonna have the best position, who's gonna have the most influence, who's gonna have the most power, who's gonna have the highest paycheck, who's gonna be the most important in the kingdom. They're arguing over that. They're all pointing fingers and calling names, and they're upset, and Jesus pulls them aside and he goes, guys, you've missed it. The example that was set for you is not the example that was best for you. He's like, there's a better way. Instead, he says, if you really wanna be great, let me show you the way. If you really wanna be great, he says, then it's choosing the posture of a servant and a slave. He says, if you really want a great life, you really want to be great in life, he says, then it's about putting others first. And he says, it's not about climbing ladders, right? He's like, this is not it. This is not how you get a great life. This is not how you build a great life. This is not the key to greatness. It's not the higher I climb, the happier I am. Jesus says, no. If you really want a great life, if you really want success, if you really want importance, if you really want to reach your potential, you really want to discover purpose, he says, then you've got to step off the ladder and become one instead. This is the flip that Jesus introduces to them. He goes, you want a great life? He said, great. I want that for you. I want you to have a great life. I want you to discover your potential. I want you to have purpose and meaning. I want you to discover importance and to have an impact. He goes, but it's not on the ladder. He says, instead, you've got to get off the ladder and become one instead. He goes, greatness in life is not about climbing ladders. It's about being a ladder. The two examples that he gives, you guys, a servant and a slave. Do you know what those were? In first century, those were the lowest positions that you could have in a society. The servant and the slave. And their entire existence was there to help elevate others, to serve others, to help them accomplish their goals and their dreams and their needs. That's the role of the servant and the slave. And Jesus says, if you want a great life, he says, that's the way to it. He goes, embrace life as a ladder and view it as your goal and your role in all of your relationships and in every area of your life to elevate others. That's the purpose of a ladder as well, right? The purpose of a ladder, when it's fulfilling its truest potential, is that it is helping others to reach heights they could not otherwise get on their own. And for those that are vertically challenged like myself, that is a gift, right? That's the purpose of a ladder, though. It's to help people to reach heights that they could not otherwise reach on their own. And Jesus says, that's the posture, that's the perspective that we've got to embrace if we want to experience and to build a life that is truly great. He says, step off the ladder. Quit climbing and trying to out-height others. He says, and instead become a ladder. He says, that's the way to true greatness. And you guys, at first, I know that seems so odd that the idea that the best life you could possibly live, the greatest life you could possibly live is one that's lived laying yours down for other people. I know that sounds so counterintuitive, that is so countercultural, that is so different from anything that you're gonna hear really anywhere else in life. And yet, if you were to stop and to think about it for a little bit, you will see the wisdom and the power in Jesus' words. And you will see the truth in his invitation. Because you guys think about it. Aren't those the kind of people, the people that step off the ladder and choose to be one instead? Aren't those the type of people that you want to be around? Aren't those the type of people that you want to surround yourself with? Aren't those the type of people that you hope to date or marry? Like, y'all, aren't those the type of people that you hope to become? Aren't those the type of people that you want in your friend group? Those are the type of people I want to be around. Those are the type of people I hope my kids become. Those are the type of, that's the type of man that I hope my little girl meets one day. Not somebody that's busy trying to climb ladders and be a somebody, but somebody that lays his life down for her because she's worth it. Don't you want that? Aren't those the type of people? Y'all, the ladder people. The people that lay their lives down to elevate others and to serve people. Aren't those the kind of people in your life that have made the biggest difference? Aren't they the ones that have impacted you the most? Y'all, I know that's true in my own life. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna try to get through this. One of those people, you guys, is in the room tonight. His name is Gus. I don't know where he's at. Where are you at? Stand up. Y'all, this is Gus. And when I was 19, I can't look at it. When I was 19 years old, I was a mess. I was living for myself. I was trying to climb ladders. I was on my way just to nowhere, just climbing a never-ending ladder, striving and straining. And y'all, I needed help. And that guy right there, he's a pastor now, but he wasn't a pastor, he was a landscaper. And he loved Jesus. And he embraced life as a ladder, and he believed in me, and he gave me a job. He served me. He showed up for me. He didn't give up on me. When other people would have fired me or given up on me, he kept showing up, and he kept caring for me, and he kept being there for me. And you guys, ultimately, that guy right there told me about Jesus. And at 19, 20 years old, I gave my life to Christ because that guy chose not to climb the ladder, but to be a ladder instead. And Gus, you know this, but your ladder living, your choice to do that changed my life. And y'all, I'm just telling you, I would not be here if it weren't for that man right there. So thank you. Those are the people, y'all, that impact us the most. Those are the people that God uses to change other people's lives. It's the people that choose not to climb ladders to get ahead, but it's the people that choose to lay their life down and to be a ladder instead. That man's ladder living has literally changed my life. God used him to change my life. And chances are, if your life has been changed in that way or impacted by somebody, it was somebody that chose to be a ladder for you instead. And that's the life that Jesus invites us into, you guys. It's the life that Jesus invites us to live. That, according to Jesus, is what makes for a great life. You want a great life? That's great. Jesus says, follow me into that kind of life. Be a ladder instead. Humbly choose to serve others and to put their needs before your own. You choose that kind of life, he says, that's where you find your purpose. You choose that kind of life, that's where you find impact. You choose that kind of life, that's where you have real influence. You choose that kind of life, that's where you really make a difference. That's where a great life, and that's how a great life is built. It's on humility, not hubris. It's in service, not status. That's the key to a great life. You guys, I love this because this is the way Jesus ends this is he tells us why he can tell us that. And he points us to why he can call us to that kind of life. The reason why Jesus can tell us to live those kind of lives, to live an others first kind of life is because, you guys, that's what Jesus did for us. Look what he says as he closes it out. He says, hey, if you want to be great, that's great. He says, you need to become a servant and you need to become a slave to others. You need to put other people's needs before your own. And you go, Jesus, how can you say that? Like that sounds wild. But he says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Can I just tell you guys something that Jesus is not going to ask you to do something that he wouldn't do himself? He went first. When it comes to you and I, the reason why he can tell us, hey, the greatest life you could live is laying your life down for others is because that's exactly what he came and he did for us. Spiritually speaking, you guys, so many of us, we lived our lives spiritually on the ladder. Trying to climb our way to God with our good behavior, trying to do enough good deeds that maybe we could work our way up to him. And yet because of our sin, you guys, we could never climb high enough. We could never reach far enough. We could never get there on our own because our sin keeps us separated. We could never be good enough. And so God, in his love and in his grace and in his mercy, he looked at us and he decided, hey, you know what? If they can't work their way to me, I will come to them instead. And so he sent Jesus down the ladder to become the ladder so that by God's grace, through faith in him, we might be able to be connected again. And that's what Jesus came and he did for us. He came to be the ladder. He lived the perfect life that none of us is capable of living. None of us is perfect. You know it. I know it. Jesus lived the perfect life that none of us is capable of. And then he died the death that we deserve because sin deserves a punishment. And it has consequences. And so Jesus took those consequences on himself. And then he rose from the dead so that you and I could have new life and a connection with our Heavenly Father. By grace, through faith, Jesus became the ladder for us, which is why he can ask us to be the ladder for others. He went first. So here's the deal. Two groups of people I need to talk to tonight. We'll close. Two groups of people though. First, there are some of you in here and you have never embraced by grace through faith the work that Jesus has done for you so that you could have a relationship with your Heavenly Father. Maybe some of you in here, you've been striving and straining and trying to climb your way to God, but you've never just simply believed and received the grace of Jesus. Some of you in here didn't even know that Jesus did that for you. Some of you have just been holding back. And so here's what I wanted to do. Is tonight, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to just believe and receive what Jesus has done for you. Because before you can ever live a life of laying yours down for others, you've got to receive what he's done for you. And so there are some of you in here and you have never put your trust in Jesus. You have never put your faith in Jesus. You have never said yes to the free gift of grace so that you can have a relationship with your Father in heaven. And I just wanted to offer you that opportunity. And so if that's you tonight, here's the deal. I'm not gonna, nobody's playing music right now. I'm not gonna ask everybody to bow their heads. If that's you tonight, and you know, you're like, hey, you know what? I wanna receive what Jesus did for me. I'm tired of trying to earn it. I'm tired of trying to behave good enough. I just wanna receive the gift of God's grace. If that's you tonight, would you just stand up? You know, that's you. You're like, yo, I need it. I want the gift of God's grace. And I wanna start a relationship. Yeah, go ahead, stand up. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. That's it. That's it. That's it. Absolutely. Offers on the table. You know, that's me. I love it. Keep celebrating. This is worth celebrating. Yep, that's it. That's amazing. That's amazing. I love it. That takes a lot of courage. Those of you that are standing, that takes a lot of guts. Leaders, I hope you're looking at those that stood up. For those of you that stood up, I'd love for you to be able to share that with your leaders tonight in your group, and they would love to pray with you. A prayer doesn't save you. It just starts the journey. It marks the journey. What saves you is what Jesus did for you and your acceptance of that. That's what saves you. And so for those of you that stood up, I'm so proud of you. This whole room is so excited for you. Some of you, you wanted to stand up, but you were nervous, and that's okay. I'd encourage you, have the conversation in your small group, tell your leaders about it, because you know what? The invitation doesn't have an expiration. And so you can do that tonight, you can do that tomorrow, you can do that on the beach, you can do that in your hotel room tonight while you're having conversation. But we are so proud of you. Now, there's another group of people in the room. And it's those of us in the room that you've put your faith in Jesus, but you've been living life on the ladder and not as a ladder. And it's time for you to be a ladder instead of climbing them. And so if you're somebody that you would call yourself a Christian, but you haven't been living that ladder type life, but you would say tonight, you know what? Like, I'm tired of climbing ladders. I want to be a ladder for someone else instead. I want to be a Gus for somebody else back home instead. If that's you tonight and you'd be willing to say, hey, you know what? I'm getting off the ladder and I'm going to be one instead. Would you stand up? If that's you, you're like, yo, I'm ready to be a ladder. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. That's it. Yeah, I love it. Everybody doesn't have to. Don't do it if you're not ready. Everybody does not have to. I love it. If you're standing right now, I want you to look at who's standing near you, and I want you to make sure that you hold each other accountable. And when you get back and you find yourself stressing and worrying about the stuff that you were worrying about before, and you find yourself climbing ladders and striving again instead of being a ladder, then I want you to hold each other accountable, yeah? And what I'd love to do right now is I'd love to just pray a prayer of courage over you, and then we're gonna sing and we're gonna celebrate what God's doing in people's hearts and in their lives tonight. But I'd love to pray for you right now, and I'd love it if you feel comfortable, you can lock up with somebody near you and you can pray for them while I'm praying for you guys. But we're gonna pray right now over you. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this group of students that is choosing to leave life on the ladder and to become one instead. God, you tell us that that's the greatest life we could ever live. And what we're so grateful for is that you showed us that by going first. And so thank you so much for the young people in the room that put their trust in Jesus. But for those that are standing right now, God, I also pray that you would give them an extra dose of courage to live out the conviction that they've got in their hearts right now, to actually live this stuff out, to go home and to be a ladder for someone else back at home. Because God, there's somebody else back at home that needs them to be the ladder, that needs them to love and to serve and to put their needs first. There's somebody back at home. It's a brother or a sister or a mom or a dad or a friend or a classmate or a teammate. There's somebody back at home that needs these young people to live out their commitment. And so God, would you help them? Would you fill them with the Holy Spirit? Would you empower them to actually live this kind of life? It's only possible if you're alive inside of us. And so God, would you empower these young people to do that? Because we know that ladder living changes lives. And so would you help each and every one of us to live that out when we leave here? We love you, we trust you immensely, and we pray these things in Jesus' name. And everybody said,